tere, head kuulajad. Teie lahkel loal ma
Good morning, good listeners.
sisse.
I will just come into this scene here on the stage. I'd like to draw your attention to a good exhibition from where this exhibition, the exhibition from where these things come from. And you can notice these objects here. And here you can see like a paragraph or a section from law, and this object means that often the law doesn't protect the victims the way they should. And I will be telling you stories of the other room. I'm not an expert of domestic violence myself. I work at the theater. And the theater can share lots of experiences of other people just the way as if these were the stories of my own. And in this theater play, The Other Room, well, this premiered on the 5th of June, and it's based on real stories of real people. And they speak about different forms of domestic abuse. During the last 2 years, I have heard many stories of domestic abuse. I'm sure you have also. And I wanted to share some of these with you. Perhaps some of it is familiar to you. Perhaps you've heard even the same stories. But I'd like to share them from the aspect that was also mentioned by our minister, that how can we, as citizens or specialists, how could we have helped the victims better? I wouldn't want to give any judgment. I'd just like to take the point of view of the victim, and a victim who felt that she could have received better help. The Other Room has also a direct meaning. The first story on the stage is the story of Ingrid. And she paraphrases the story very nicely. If something happened in their family, then children were punished, and they were punished severely, beaten, punched, so that it was really bloody. Then it always took place in the other room. The others were taken away, and the child who was beaten was taken to the other room. And this is like an illustration that it often the violence takes place somewhere else, in the other room, in the other apartment. But how could we change it so that the victim in the other room didn't have to feel so alone? I first interviewed Anneli. She was the first I met for an interview. She was from a small town from Estonia. She had violence also in her childhood. The father would drink alcohol and would start to hit the mother. Anneli was an exception as a child. She always went to intervene there to help the mother. She woke up in the middle of night and stood up and went there to help the mother. Her childhood dream was to leave the house, to go somewhere else. And she was quite young when she moved to Tallinn, to the capital, had a new life. And she met great young men, fun, humorous, very nice and polite. And one of them started to get closer to her and seemed still very nice, friendly and polite. And he soon proposed moving together. It often happens this way. And the man also had a child, a first grader, and they started to live together. Nice, small family. At one point, she started to have doubts. Every time the child had some kind of problem at school, had a not that good mark or was late, then the man would tell Anneli that, oh, this is between me and the child, we'll go to the other room. And he started to threaten. Often Anneli heard some crying, screaming from the other room, but she was thinking that this is between the father and the child, and she'll leave that. The man was saying that the child has ADHD, attention deficit problems, and the child is difficult to handle, and so on. So that's the way it should be. In the morning, however, once Anneli saw that the child had a black eye, and then she felt that she has to intervene. And then all the things in the other room became public, all the hitting, black eyes, and Anneli started to intervene. This resulted in the man attacking Anneli as well. And as it often goes, he had also cut off Anneli from her friends, started to limit her interaction with the friends, first the male friends, then also the female friends. So Anneli was quite alone, just in this family. When she went to intervene the violence, then she started to be strangled once. And she felt that she cannot handle it. She turned to different agencies. She talked to a school psychologist, as the child had been diagnosed with ADHD, and she was getting medication, both antidepressants and also other things, tranquilizers. And then and she was told that the problem lies in the father, actually. Then violence started to get more intense, and Anneli started to feel that she has to leave. She started to plan leaving and separating. She also let child protection officials know that she's gonna leave, so that somebody would be aware of the situation. She felt that she cannot live there in this violence anymore, that she must leave. And she was told by the child protection that, but you are the only hope of this child. Could you stay for a bit more? The only hope of this small boy. And she indeed was the only hope of this child. But this isn't what you should be telling a victim of abuse. Anneli left. She made an agreement with different relatives that they would take the calls from the boy if something happened, but she doesn't know if the child called or not. One prerequisite for coming out of this abuse was that she had to cut off her connections with this family. Today, Anneli lives a new life, has a new spouse, a child. Now this boy has also got bigger, and Anneli is happy that the boy is doing well, has come out of it. I also teach myself in the primary school. I was thinking, how could we recognize better children with behavioral problems? Anneli said that the child had good marks, and at one moment the child could just lose the temper completely, and have a complete meltdown, start to throw things and so on. So how to recognize this thing? Perhaps the reason for this kind of behavior isn't that he's a difficult child, but perhaps he's having a situation at home that needs to be addressed. Anneli ended up fine, as very many other people do with these kinds of experience. However, we could ask whether she could have ended, if she could have had a solution faster and suffered less. There's another story about Gregor, a bit similar, and there are few men who share their experience of being victim. But of course, there are many of them, but they speak less. Gregor is about my age. a man of my age. He's now successful in his professionally, but he says that until university, he had big problems with self-esteem, with self-valuing. He was thinking he's worthless, and he grew up in a home where the mother was violent. He had 4 brothers, and he once calculated that he was beaten about 3,500 times, starting from the age 3 to age 13. Some days he didn't get beaten, but on some other days he was beaten twice. So that was his case. And how did it end? He turned 13 and then he didn't cry anymore when he was hit or beaten. And this, it wasn't just just a little bit of spanking, but it was severe hitting. It wasn't just a splat. And then it developed into mental violence. The mother was saying that if something happens to me, I have heart problems, then it will be your fault. Gregor was also bullied at school. He says that bullying starts from home, actually, both from the aspect of the bully and the one who is bullied. And he said that it wasn't before getting to the university that he was able to share his experience with somebody. It was only then that he told about his experience, and then he started to heal and get better. You could ask now whether it would have been possible that somebody had noticed, maybe in kindergarten, school, or at some other stage, and asked him if he's doing well, why he has this beating marks on the back and so on. I also met Olivia. If you listen to these stories, then there are definite patterns that get repeated at the beginning of the relationship. The man is often a very romantic man who gives you flowers and presents. And you become, and when hearing all this suffering, you start to become a bit more numb. Perhaps it's an attempt to protect yourself. But at one point, you start to notice stories that don't have severe physical violence. Like Olivia's case. She met a great man. She had been told that Olivia cannot have children, but she got pregnant with this man, and everything was beautiful. He was a well-mannered man with higher education and so on, but he liked other women a lot. He also liked belittling and humiliating Olivia. He was telling her, why aren't you as fit as the other women? Why don't you have that good mood as others? Why are you so tired all the time? Why cannot you be spontaneous and so on? And then Olivia was telling him, but I am tired because I have a small kid and a small toddler and you are away all the time. But it wasn't sufficient explanation for that. And there was this mental belittling all the time. And then once Olivia decided to separate and told the man, but it's often that after separation, violence doesn't end. Olivia moved out with a small child, but the man started to use the child for manipulation. In many ways. First of all, once custody rules hadn't been agreed, the man took the child and escaped. Didn't respond to phone calls and was gone for many days. Olivia called him 10, 15, 20 times a day. Nobody replied, and she didn't know where the child is. Is she okay? Is the child okay? Is the child being fed? is the child maybe crying? So it was a lot of desperation.
me ilmselt ei oska seda tihti, mina ei osanud seda klassifitseerida vägivallaks.
I couldn't classify this act as violence
hooldusõigus
or
jagatud,
abuse.
minu nädal, sinu nädal,
Once
siis
the
lapse
custody
isa
rules
planeerib alati
are set,
tegevusi ema nädalal.
1 week
Lapse isa on
the child
ja ta ütleb,
with mother and
selle,
1 week with
lähme
father.
reisile. Mul on just need kuupäevad.
And then once the custody had been decided, then the father started to arrange it that once it was the week with mother, then the father said that, oh child, let's go on a trip. And then the mother said that, but this is my week with the child. Then the father would say, oh, the mother is bad, cannot let us go on a trip. Or another situation, the child's father started to send letters anonymously using a name Kristi Tamm, which is a very ordinary Estonian name. There are many Kristi Tamms. And he wrote a letter. Hello, my name is Kristi Tamm. And he wrote the letter to the child's mother. I was in the kindergarten. I saw the child crying in the kindergarten. The child was saying that mother is abusive, makes him study a lot and is using physical abuse. So I will contact the child protection and I hope you'll be pondering on what you've done to the child. Have a nice evening. Sincerely, Kristi Tamm. So the mother's thinking, so somebody is threatening me. And she contacted the kindergarten and management, and it came out that the letter had been written by the child's father. But how to make a person accountable in this kind of situation? We don't have any law against it. No laws against stopping this man. And this abuser might also know the law very well and use this legal vacuum. There are also other stories. There's something that struck me. The woman had been locked out from home. She wanted to get home. It was winter time. All the warm clothes were inside. It was a really cold day. And she called the emergency number and said that I'm in trouble. It's winter. I have only a dress on. I'm outside. I cannot get in. And they called back to her from the emergency number. And I told her that, but why? But probably the man is somewhere away from home. And then the woman said that, no, he's here close to the house, so he's just not letting me in. And then the emergency number told her, we are sure that he's not punishing you in vain. He probably has a reason. So this isn't the kind of answer you would be expecting from an emergency number. And this makes me recall Maie, another woman, because these problems isn't about only children and working age people, but also about the elderly. Maie was one of the oldest that we interviewed. She had had a long story, long life, long experience, and she summed it up very shortly. She said, I had an abusive family in the childhood, abusive relationship later. She escaped it and came out of it. And she said that she thinks that the most important thing here is that we share these stories. All the people have hurt me, have only been afraid of everything getting public. If we shed some light to these dark corners, then this darkness will disappear. This is what she said. I hope that we'll figure it out how to hold this light so high that it will lighten these grim parts and not blind them. And that would have this energy to show this light.
aitäh kuulamast!
And also, if you can, come to the theatre. Thank you for listening.
Ära lahku veel lavalt ja lavale. Esiteks suur tänu sulle.
Don't go yet. Thank you, first of all,
kas ma nägin õigesti
for the speech.
internetist,
Did I understand right on the webpage that there are still free tickets available for these theatre plays in the autumn? Yes, indeed. The audience, we have few seats, but still we have some availability. How has the reception been? What has the audience thought? Yes, it's been, people have liked it. And the people whose stories are told there, and thank you, and big thank you to also the specialists who supported us, that the people whose stories were shared, they were happy about it, and I think that's a big thing. Another question. Do your colleagues share your enthusiasm about noticing abuse? Do you have tools to recognize problems in children's behavior at school? My answer is yes. I work as a after-school activity teacher. I'm a teacher of drama studies. I know that in the school there's a very strong support system. There are psychologists, special pedagogues, and also the management board is very much involved. If child acts strangely in the school, then they take action immediately and intervene. Another question. Why are people uncomfortable about intervening if these are the people who don't intervene themselves? Why does it make them feel uncomfortable? I think it's about our egos that have got hurt. It's also like just, why are some people who eat meat very belligerent against vegetarians? Perhaps these people think that the person who's, for example, vegetarian is perhaps doing something right, but I feel that as I cannot do it myself, then I feel uncomfortable. Thank you very much for this presentation. On website you can get a good overview of these theatre plays. Teises toas in the other room. So great thanks.